Jenna thought she'd been abandoned. Again. Another attempt at finding love had just begun, only to collapse before it even had a chance. She sat alone at Ta Chiodam Tate Cafe on Charles Street, fingers wrapped tightly around a cup of chamomile tea gone cold, trying to convince herself it didn't matter this time, that she was used to this feeling by now. But right then, the door swung open. Two little girls, maybe 6 years old, stepped inside, wearing matching red coats. Their bright eyes shone with a strange kind of determination and a secret yet to be revealed. They weren't supposed to be there, and their father, whoever he was, had absolutely no idea. Within minutes, the words they spoke would turn what seemed like a failed date into the beginning of something neither Jenna nor he could have ever imagined. This story is for everyone who's ever frozen their heart shut, for those who lost love and thought they'd never find it again, for those brave enough to love after pain, after betrayal, after loss so deep it crushed the soul, and especially for the small hearts with enormous courage, for the children who somehow know what adults often forget, that love is always worth fighting for. Because sometimes second chances don't come the way you expect. If you too believe that fate has its own way of arranging things, hit subscribe and stay with me through this story, because who knows? Maybe you too once had your own 17-minute late date. Now tell me, what do you think those two little girls brought that would change her life forever? Jenna Carlisle looked down at her phone for the 7th time in just 3 minutes. 6:47 p.m. 17 minutes late. She sat alone at a corner table in Tata Bakery and Cafe on Charles Street, right in the heart of Beacon Hill. The cup of mint tea in her hand had long gone cold. The cozy autumn air of Boston, the kind that usually made this cafe feel comforting, now only made her chest feel tighter. Around her, couples leaned close, whispering and laughing softly. The clinking of spoons against cups, the hum of jazz blending with gentle chatter. And she, the only one sitting alone. 3 years. 3 years since Jenna buried herself in work at the veterinary clinic in Back Bay. 3 years since she'd told herself, work is enough. I don't need anyone else. That when a heart turns to ice, it can no longer be broken. But Betty Collins, the most energetic and talkative co-worker at the clinic, wouldn't let it go. "It's just one coffee, Jenna," Betty had insisted 3 days ago, blocking the break room door. Andrew Callahan, 35, architectural engineer. "Trust me, he's amazing. Trust me." 2 simple words, but for Jenna, trust had become a luxury. 3 years ago, she'd trusted someone. Marcus, the man who had promised her everything, then vanished the moment she needed him most, when her father passed away, when the clinic debts weighed her down. Marcus had taught her a brutal lesson. Never let anyone get close enough to hurt you again. And now, as she stared toward the cafe door, that familiar feeling returned. Disappointment, bitterness, the faint sting of someone who once dared to hope. 6:51. The bell above the door chimed. Jenna looked up, her heart skipping a beat. A spark of hope flickered, one she tried to extinguish immediately. But the person who entered wasn't the kind 30-something man with the gentle smile Betty had described. It wasn't Andrew Callahan. It was 2 little twin girls, about 6 years old, wearing matching red coats, light brown curls bouncing, and eyes filled with determination. The real story began at that very moment. The girls couldn't have been more than 6 years old. Their chestnut curls bounced lightly with every step, and their bright blue eyes scanned the cafe with a kind of determination rarely seen in children. Both wore identical red coats over their school uniforms, their hands clasped tightly together as if afraid of getting lost in this strange, grown-up world. Then those eyes landed on Jenna. Before she could even process what was happening, the girls marched straight toward her table with the confidence of tiny soldiers on a top-secret mission. The taller one, by barely half an inch, stopped right in front of Jenna, tilted her head, and asked with utter seriousness, "Are you Miss Jenna?" Jenna blinked, startled. Yes. And you two are—" "I'm Poppy," the girl declared crisply, then pointed at her sister. "And this is Sadie. Our dad says sorry for being late." The world around Jenna seemed to sway slightly. These were definitely Andrew's daughters. But Betty had never mentioned that he had children, let alone twins. "Dad had to stay at work," Sadie said softly, her tone calmer, gentler than her sister's. "There was an emergency." "Sadie!" Poppy quickly clapped a hand over her sister's mouth, glancing at Jenna with a mix of embarrassment and concern. Jenna's surprise must have shown because Poppy let out a sigh, a strangely mature sigh for a 6-year-old, then pulled out the chair across from Jenna and sat down. Her sister obediently took the seat beside her. "All right," Poppy said, folding her arms on the table like someone about to lead a meeting. "We think we should tell the truth." "The truth?" Jenna raised an eyebrow. "Dad doesn't know we're here," Sadie whispered, her eyes flickering with guilt. "He doesn't?" Jenna began, but Poppy jumped in before she could finish. "But he really wanted to come. We heard him on the phone last night." Jenna leaned forward, curiosity piqued. "Last night?" Sadie nodded, her curls bouncing. "We were supposed to be asleep, but we heard him talking in the hallway. Someone called about a big problem at the new library project. Something about the foundation. Dad said he couldn't believe it happened tonight of all nights. Then he said he had a very important date at 6:30 at Tate Cafe on Charles Street," Poppy added proudly, brimming with confidence. "And how did you two know this was the right place?" Jenna asked with a smile, unable to hide her amusement. "We're smart," Poppy replied matter-of-factly. "Because Dad wrote the cafe's name on the kitchen calendar. He circled it 3 times and drew a smiley face." Something warm spread through Jenna's chest. A smiley face. "Dad was really excited," Sadie whispered, her voice as soft as a breeze. "He even ironed his clothes yesterday. He never does that." Jenna laughed. A rare, genuine laugh on what had felt like a hopeless evening. These 2 little girls, with their serious faces and tiny, secret mission, had somehow turned a failed date into something entirely different. "So, when we heard Dad say he might be late, we made a plan," Poppy explained, firm and composed. "We asked Mrs. Ruth, she's our babysitter, to drive us here. We told her it was super, super important." Jenna glanced out the window. Sure enough, an elderly woman sat in a sedan parked by the curb. Her expression a mix of confusion and patience. When she caught Jenna's eye, she smiled and gave a little wave. "We had to beg her," Sadie admitted, her cheeks turning pink. "Maybe we cried a little." "Strategic crying," Poppy corrected solemnly. "Necessary for the mission." Jenna bit her lip to keep from laughing. These 2 were remarkable. Small, stubborn, and perhaps so irresistibly endearing that they managed to warm a heart she thought had long gone cold. "Would you girls like to sit with me for a bit? Maybe have some hot chocolate?" The twins' faces lit up like Christmas lights. Poppy jumped off her chair, dashed to the window, and waved wildly at Mrs. Ruth sitting in the car outside. The elderly woman sighed, but eventually nodded, smiling with a look of resigned affection. When the girls returned to the table, Jenna called the waitress and ordered 2 mugs of hot chocolate piled high with whipped cream. While waiting, she quietly studied Poppy and Sadie more closely. Beneath their confidence and mischief, Jenna saw something else, a quiet sadness, a weight that children their age should never have to carry. "So," Jenna asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "does your dad go on dates often?" The question hung in the warm air between them. The girls exchanged glances, their eyes speaking silently. Then Poppy slowly shook her head. "Never," she said softly. "You're the first one, since Mommy went to heaven." The hum of the cafe, the hiss of the espresso machine, the clinking of cups, all seemed to fade away. Jenna felt her heart tighten. "When did that happen?" she asked gently. 2 years ago, Sadie replied, her small hands twisting the edge of her coat. "Right after we started kindergarten. Mommy got sick really fast. The doctor said there was something in her brain. Aneurysm," the cold medical term flashed through Jenna's mind, but she didn't say it. Instead, she reached across the table and took Sadie's tiny hand in hers. "I'm so sorry," Jenna whispered. "Dad takes care of us all by himself," Poppy said proudly. "He learned how to braid hair from YouTube videos." "Really?" Jenna smiled softly. "He watched them all week," Sadie added, a small grin spreading on her little face. "At first the braids were really bad. My hair got all messy." "But he kept trying," Poppy said. "Now he's really good at it." When the hot chocolates arrived, the whipped cream towered like little white mountains. The girls lifted their mugs carefully, trying to sip without getting cream on their noses. Of course, they failed spectacularly. Within seconds, both had white mustaches, looking like 2 tiny, serious old men. Jenna laughed, a real, heartfelt laugh, the kind she hadn't felt in a long time. "Dad also makes the best grilled cheese sandwiches," Sadie said, licking a bit of cream from her lip. 3 kinds of cheese, and every night he sings Mommy's favorite song for us. He doesn't sing as well as Mommy did, but we don't tell him that." Tears welled in Jenna's eyes. She pictured the man, Andrew Callahan, staying up late watching braiding tutorials, doing everything he could to bring a sense of normalcy back for his daughters. A father quietly learning to move through grief, standing tall for 2 little girls who needed him more than anything else in the world. "Dad was really nervous about tonight," Sadie said softly, as if revealing a secret. "He changed his shirt 4 times." "4 times?" Jenna laughed, fully caught up in their story. "And he practiced talking in front of the mirror," Sadie added, her eyes widening. "We weren't supposed to watch, but we peeked through the door crack." "What was he saying?" Jenna leaned forward, genuinely curious. Poppy straightened her back, cleared her throat, and tried to mimic an adult's deep voice. "Hello, I'm Andrew. Nice to meet you." She paused, frowned, and shook her head. "Hi, Jenna. No, that's not right. Jenna, hi, I'm Andrew Callahan." "Then he said a bad word," Sadie whispered, eyes round as marbles, "and decided he'd just be himself." Jenna laughed. Not the polite, strained laugh of a failed date, but a real one. Light and genuine. She felt something inside her chest begin to melt, to soften. Then Sadie suddenly grew serious. "Dad really wanted tonight to go well. He never breaks a promise, so if he had to stay at the site, it must be something really important." Poppy nodded firmly. "Dad designs buildings to keep people safe. If something's wrong with the foundation, the whole structure could fall. He always says safety is his responsibility." And in that moment, Jenna understood. The 2 little girls sitting before her weren't just adorable accomplices trying to save their father's date. They were protectors, defending their dad's happiness with all the love their small hearts could hold. "You must be so proud of him," Jenna said softly. Both nodded in perfect unison. "He's the best dad in the whole world," they said together. Then Sadie lowered her gaze, her voice barely above a whisper. "But sometimes Dad gets really sad," she said. "He looks at Mommy's picture when he thinks we're asleep. We see him standing in the hallway, just staring and not saying anything." Jenna's throat tightened. "That's why we were happy when Aunt Betty said she found someone nice for him to meet," Poppy said, her voice pure and hopeful. "We just want Dad to smile again, like he used to." Aunt Betty. The missing piece clicked into place. Betty was Andrew's sister-in-law. "We saw Dad this morning," Sadie continued, her eyes lighting up. "He was humming while making breakfast. He only does that when he's really happy." "And he made butterfly-shaped pancakes?" Poppy exclaimed. "He said today was going to be a good day." Jenna's phone buzzed lightly on the table. She glanced down. A message from Betty. "Have you heard from Andrew? He's not picking up." Jenna looked up at the twins. "Tell me honestly, your dad has no idea you're here, does he?" "His phone's probably in the truck," Poppy replied matter-of-factly. "He forgets stuff all the time, especially when he's looking at blueprints." "But he's almost done," Sadie added, her voice full of hope. "We heard him say on the phone that he just needed 2 more hours." Jenna glanced at her watch. 7:25 p.m. If Andrew had arrived at the site around 5:30, he might actually be finishing up. An idea flashed through her mind. Impulsive, a little reckless, maybe even crazy. But as she looked at the 2 little girls, the ones who had secretly orchestrated this entire save-the-date mission just to help their father smile again, Jenna couldn't help but smile herself. And beneath that smile was something deeper, quieter. Something she hadn't dared to admit, even to herself. She wanted to meet that man. The man who learned to braid hair from YouTube. The man who drew a smiley face on the calendar just for a date. The man who still sang his late wife's favorite song to their daughters, even when his voice cracked under the weight of missing her. "I have an idea," Jenna said, leaning forward slightly, her voice lowering as if sharing a secret. "What if we bring dinner to your dad instead? He's been working hard all day. He must be starving by now." The change was instant. Poppy and Sadie's faces lit up as if Christmas had come early. "Really?" they exclaimed in unison, eyes sparkling. "Really?" Jenna smiled. "So, tell me, what's your dad's favorite food?" "Chinese food!" Poppy shouted, nearly bouncing out of her seat. "From Golden Dragon on Tremont Street. He loves their orange chicken." "But he always orders sweet and sour pork, too," Sadie added calmly. "And fried rice, lots of fried rice, and spring rolls, the crispy kind." Jenna laughed, pulling out her phone and opening the food delivery app. "Then let's get all of that, and a little extra for the people working with him tonight." As Jenna placed the order, the girls chattered non-stop, their words tumbling over one another in excitement. They told her how their dad had learned to sew just so he could fix their favorite stuffed animals. How he never missed a single school play or parent meeting, even if it meant leaving the construction site early. And how last summer he'd built them a treehouse, a 3-month weekend project. "The treehouse has a secret password," Sadie whispered, leaning closer, her eyes gleaming. "It's Mommy's angels, because that's what she used to call us." "Dad says we have Mommy's eyes," Poppy added softly. "And her smile, too." "Mommy used to be a music teacher," Sadie continued, her voice barely a breath. She taught kids how to love music. That's why Dad sings to us every night. He says he wants to keep her music alive. Jenna blinked, holding back the tears that threatened to spill. She had come to this cafe expecting a simple blind date, maybe an hour of polite small talk, then a courteous goodbye. And yet here she was, sitting with two extraordinary little girls, learning about love, resilience, and what it means to keep moving forward even after your heart has been broken. 20 minutes later, they were seated inside Mrs. Ruth's sedan, their laps piled high with steaming bags of Chinese takeout. The car rolled through the cool Boston evening toward the construction site. Mrs. Ruth, the elderly babysitter, had been thoroughly briefed on the plan. She drove with quiet amusement, occasionally glancing in the rearview mirror, half admiring the girl's boldness, half anxious about what Andrew's reaction would be when he discovered that his date rescue team was about to storm his workplace. The construction site came into view, the new Allston branch of the Boston Public Library. A massive steel framework was slowly taking shape, surrounded by the hazy glow of floodlights cutting through the dust. Columns, scaffolding, and silhouettes stretched across the ground, painting a scene both rugged and full of promise. As if they were stepping onto the set of an unfinished film titled Hope and Perseverance. They found Andrew inside a temporary trailer office, rolling up technical blueprints while talking with two workers. Even from outside, Jenna could see the fatigue in his posture. Tense shoulders, a slight hunch from a long day's work. His sleeves were rolled to his elbows, his hair tousled, his blue shirt streaked with dirt. And yet, he carried that quiet focus of someone who'd just solved a major problem. Steady, practical, unshowy. Poppy knocked on the trailer door. 3 quick, confident taps. Andrew looked up. His eyes landed on his 2 little girls, and within seconds his expression shifted. Confusion, shock, then outright panic. When his gaze finally met Jenna, standing just behind them, he froze. For a heartbeat, their eyes locked, and Jenna felt a jolt run down her spine. Andrew Callahan was even more captivating than she'd imagined. Not in a glossy, magazine-perfect way, but in a real one. A face marked by stories. The faint lines at the corners of his eyes spoke of laughter and tears. His rough hands told of years of work. And in those blue eyes, warmth and unspoken sorrow intertwined. "Poppy? Sadie? How did you—" he began, his voice faltering as his gaze stayed on Jenna. "You're Jenna, right?" he asked, though his tone left no doubt. "You're here, with my daughters." "Surprise!" Poppy shouted, throwing her arms up like a tiny mission commander. "We brought you dinner." "We didn't want Miss Jenna to think you forgot her," Sadie added softly, sincere and earnest. Andrew's 2 co-workers, both middle-aged men in hard hats, clearly struggling not to laugh, quickly stepped in. "We'll, take these food bags outside," one of them said, giving Andrew a knowing wink. "Good luck, boss." And with that, they disappeared, leaving 4 people inside the small trailer, under the warm flicker of fluorescent light, with the faint scent of sawdust in the air. For a moment, silence. Andrew just stood there, staring at the trio in front of him. 2 tiny daughters, and the woman he never expected to meet under these circumstances. He was clearly trying to piece it all together. How 2 6-year-olds had managed to track their father's date schedule and bring the date to the construction site. "Mrs. Ruth drove us," Poppy blurted out, sensing the question he hadn't voiced yet. "We asked very politely." "We heard you talking on the phone last night," Sadie confessed, her voice barely audible, "about the emergency." "And we saw how excited you were for tonight," Poppy added quickly. You even drew a smiley face on the calendar." Andrew's cheeks flushed crimson. "You saw that?" "We saw everything," Poppy said proudly. "We even took a picture, just in case you erased it." Andrew laughed awkwardly, running a hand through his messy hair. Jenna noticed his fingers tremble slightly, and his gaze flickering between her and the girls, as if he couldn't quite believe this was real. I'm so sorry," he finally said to Jenna. His voice was husky, unpolished, but so sincere it was impossible to stay upset. "I just meant to wrap things up quickly. I thought I could be a little late, text you, and I had no idea the girls would—" "Rescue your date?" Jenna teased, raising an eyebrow. "No," Poppy objected, frowning. "We caught the date." "It was running away," Sadie explained, dead serious. Despite the chaos, Andrew couldn't help laughing. A real laugh that transformed his entire face. The exhaustion melted away, replaced by something warm, gentle, human. Jenna looked at him then, really looked, and saw the man the girls had described. The man who learned to braid hair from YouTube. The man who made butterfly-shaped pancakes. The man who still sang his late wife's favorite song each night, even when his voice cracked halfway through. "My little girls really are heroes," Andrew said softly, kneeling to hug them both. The twins wrapped their tiny arms around his waist, and the small trailer suddenly felt warmer against the chilly night outside. When Andrew looked up again, his eyes met Jenna's, and this time she saw it clearly. Fear. Fear that she might walk away. Fear that he'd ruined something before it even began. But Jenna didn't see a clumsy man or a failed date. She saw someone real. A man with cracks, grief, and a love so fierce that it had inspired two little girls to fight for his happiness. "I'll understand if you'd rather forget tonight," Andrew said quietly. "Having your date hijacked by 6-year-olds and turned into a construction site dinner isn't exactly how I plan to start things." Jenna glanced at Poppy and Sadie, their small faces tense, hands tightly clasped, waiting for her verdict. She thought about the evening, the hot chocolate and whipped cream mustaches, the braiding story, the triple cheese sandwiches, the man who drew a smiley face on a calendar just to allow himself one more chance at hope. Jenna smiled, meeting his eyes. "Actually," she said slowly, "your daughters are pretty extraordinary." "They get that from their mom," Andrew said automatically, then stopped short. His expression faltered. I didn't mean—" "It's okay," Jenna said gently, her voice soft as warm tea. "They told me about her. She must have been wonderful." Something shifted in Andrew's face. The guardedness faded, replaced by something tender, honest, wistful. "She really was," he said quietly. "And I think she'd probably be laughing if she saw this. Our two little girls orchestrating a matchmaking mission." "Dad," Sadie tugged his sleeve urgently, "the orange chicken's getting cold." "And Miss Jenna probably hasn't eaten yet," Poppy added, in a tone so practical it made Jenna chuckle. Andrew looked down at the bags of food, then back up at Jenna. Would you like to have dinner here? It's not exactly a restaurant. And there's a faint smell of sawdust, but—" "I'd love to," Jenna interrupted, smiling. And she meant it. They cleared a space on the table, pushing aside blueprints, clipboards, and metal rulers. Andrew rummaged through a cabinet and came back with a few paper plates, laughing as he apologized for the limited facilities. When they spread out the food, the air filled with the scent of orange, garlic, and ginger, warm, comforting, alive. The girls chattered excitedly, recounting their mission in vivid detail, persuading Mrs. Ruth, choosing the food, and perfectly timing their grand arrival. Andrew listened, smiling through every word, and between those smiles, he kept glancing at Jenna with a mix of embarrassment, gratitude, and something softer. Those glances began to change. Gradually, awkwardness turned into surprise. Surprise into hope. "So, you really practiced introducing yourself 4 times?" Jenna teased as she spooned fried rice onto a plate. Andrew groaned and covered his face. "They told you that, didn't they?" "The blue shirt was the best one," Sadie said seriously. "That's the one you picked." Jenna's eyes flicked to the blue shirt, now wrinkled after a long day, but clearly chosen with care. "Good choice," she said softly. Andrew looked up. Their eyes met. The moment lasted only a second, but it made Jenna's heart skip. There was something real in that glance, a fragile connection, like a thin thread of light between two people who had both kept their hearts locked away. And along with that connection, she saw something else in his eyes: fear. The fear of letting someone get too close. The fear of losing again. The very same fear she'd been carrying for 3 years. Dinner went on with gentle conversation. The girls talked about school, their friends, and how they were learning piano. "Just like Mommy." Andrew asked about Jenna's work at the veterinary clinic, his eyes lighting up as she described rescued dogs, unexpected surgeries, and long but fulfilling nights on call. "I've always wanted a dog," Poppy said, glancing at her father hopefully. "We've talked about that," Andrew replied kindly, "when Daddy's not working so many hours." "But now you have Miss Jenna," Sadie said matter-of-factly. "She can help you." "Sadie," Andrew's face turned red, his tone half panicked. Jenna laughed, a soft, warm laugh. "I could help," she said quietly, "if you'd like." They finished dinner and cleaned up. The girls were yawning now, their eyelids heavy after such a long day. It was close to 9. "We should get you two home," Andrew said gently, then turned to Jenna. "But I was wondering, would you maybe want to— I know tonight wasn't what we planned, but maybe we could try again? A real date? One where I actually show up on time. No drills, no falling concrete." Jenna smiled, then hesitated. That moment, she knew, was a crossroads. She could retreat to the safe, quiet corner of her life where no one could hurt her again. Or she could step forward, into the unknown. She looked at Andrew, then at Poppy and Sadie, leaning sleepily against each other. And she realized it wasn't just fear of being hurt, it was fear of loving a family, not just a man. Fear of becoming part of something, and losing it all again. But in Andrew's blue eyes, she saw that same fear, and strangely, it made her feel at peace. "I like pancakes," Jenna said softly, her voice trembling just slightly. "I heard someone makes them in very special shapes." The girls shot up instantly, squealing, "Yes! Dad, invite Miss Jenna for Saturday breakfast." Andrew looked at her, and in his eyes was something raw yet genuine, a fragile but unmistakably real spark of hope. "Would you like to come for breakfast on Saturday?" he asked. "I promise this time I'll be there on time. No foundations, no construction sites, no disappearing acts." 8 a.m.? Jenna asked. 8 a.m., he said. "And I'll wear the blue shirt." Jenna smiled. "Then it's a date." Behind him, Poppy and Sadie tried, and utterly failed, to high-five quietly. "Mission accomplished," Poppy whispered, loud enough for him to hear. "I heard that, you little conspirators," Andrew said, ruffling their hair, his voice a mix of affection and helpless amusement. As they stepped outside the trailer, The Boston night air brushed against their cheeks, cool and crisp. Jenna looked up at the city lights glimmering against the dark sky and realized something inside her had shifted. It was as if a door that had been locked for 3 years had just opened. Just a crack, but enough for the light to come through. Saturday morning arrived with the soft golden light of autumn streaming through the kitchen window of Andrew Callahan's home in Beacon Hill. Jenna stood on the front porch at exactly 7:58 a.m., her hands trembling slightly, though she couldn't quite explain why. The feeling, a mix of excitement, anticipation, and a trace of fear, was unlike anything she'd experienced before, not even that night at the construction site. She hadn't even raised her hand to knock when the door burst open. "You're here! You're here! You're here!" Poppy and Sadie shouted in unison, still in matching pajamas, hair a tangled mess. They each grabbed one of Jenna's hands and pulled her inside with surprising strength for 2 tiny girls. "We've been waiting since 7, Sadie panted. "Dad said we couldn't call and wake you up. But we really wanted to." The house was warm and alive, filled with the scent of butter, vanilla, and freshly brewed coffee. Crayon drawings covered the fridge. A basket of clean laundry sat half-folded on the couch. 2 little school backpacks hung by the door. Everything felt tidy, cozy, lived in. Not just a house, but a home, filled with love. And in the kitchen stood Andrew. He wore a neatly pressed blue shirt, dark jeans, and had a small streak of flour on his left cheek. When he saw Jenna, he smiled. A real smile, unguarded and easy, so different from the tense one he'd worn that night at the site. Morning Andrew looked lighter, warmer, entirely himself. "You made it," he said, a note of relief in his voice. "I made it," Jenna replied, smiling back. "And I'm very curious about these famous butterfly pancakes." "They're the best in the world," Sadie said confidently. "Even when Dad burns some, we still eat them all." That morning unfolded like a dream. Everything felt effortless, natural, as if they'd known each other for years. Andrew flipped pancakes while the girls competed to show Jenna their drawings, crafts, and songs from school. They ate together around the kitchen table, syrup coating little fingers, laughter mingling with the smell of coffee, flour, and soft morning light. Jenna watched quietly. She noticed the way Andrew wiped Sadie's mouth without being asked, the way he cut Poppy's pancakes into smaller bites even when she insisted, "I can do it myself." And in those small gestures, in the way he looked at his daughters, there was such gentleness, patience, and deep love that it made Jenna's chest ache. Yet, amid the laughter, there were moments when Andrew grew quiet. His gaze would drift toward the window, where sunlight glimmered through golden leaves, and for an instant, Jenna could see it clearly. The pain that hadn't faded. It was still there, buried deep, quiet, like a wound that had healed over but still throbbed now and then. After breakfast, Sadie brought Jenna a hairbrush, her eyes wide with hope. "Daddy's braids are really good," she said, "but could you try mine, please?" Jenna's heart nearly melted. "I'd love to," she said softly. She sat on the sofa, and Sadie nestled between her knees, sitting still and patient. Jenna ran her fingers gently through the girl's soft curls, brushing them strand by strand. Across the room, Andrew was at the sink washing dishes, but she could feel his gaze. When she looked up, their eyes met, just for a second, but in that second, something passed between them. Trust, calm, and the fragile beginning of something more. He had let her into his world, the world of his daughters. And this moment, braiding Sadie's hair in that very home, meant more than any words could say. "Your braid is beautiful," Sadie whispered, when Jenna tied the final ribbon. Not as pretty as the ones your dad makes, Jenna replied, trying to sound casual. Sadie giggled. Maybe just as pretty, she said shyly, but truthfully. Poppy appeared just then, skipping around the sofa. Miss Jenna, do you want to see our treehouse? Andrew glanced over, a hint of bashful pride in his eyes. If you'd like to, he said, but fair warning, it's small. These two like to pretend it's a castle. It is a castle, Poppy declared, beaming. And Jenna laughed, not just at the words, but at the feeling blooming inside her chest. A feeling she'd thought she'd lost forever. Outside, the Boston autumn air was crisp and clear, the kind of chill that made you breathe in deeply just to remind yourself you were alive. The treehouse stood nestled in the arms of an old oak tree in the backyard. Its weathered wood faded silver by years of sun and rain, with a small rope ladder and a square window looking out over a sea of golden leaves. Jenna recognized it immediately. Andrew had built it himself. Not perfect, not polished, but solid, enduring, and full of love. You have to know the password before you can come up, Sadie whispered gravely, as if entrusting her with a national secret. Jenna crouched down, smiling. And what's the password? The twins exchanged a long, conspiratorial glance, two tiny spies deciding if they could share their code. Then Sadie leaned in close and whispered, barely audible, Mommy's angels. Jenna repeated softly, almost reverently, Mommy's angels. She could feel the weight of it, like being granted entry into something sacred. The girls grinned and scrambled up the rope ladder, Jenna following, with Andrew climbing behind her at a slower pace. Inside, the little house was warm and full of quiet magic. Cushions lined the floor. The walls were plastered with drawings, butterflies, rainbows, and uneven hearts. On a small wooden shelf in the corner sat a framed photo of a beautiful woman. Light brown curls, soft blue eyes, and a smile full of kindness. That's Mommy, Poppy said softly. Jenna's throat tightened. She's beautiful, she whispered, her voice trembling. Dad built this the summer after she went to heaven, Sadie explained. He worked every weekend. We helped. Kinda. We handed him nails and stuff. Mostly, we just watched. Andrew's voice was low, steady. I needed to build something. Something that lasted. Something they could always have. Jenna turned to look at him, and in the pale gold light filtering through the little window, she saw the truth written all over his face. The quiet grief of a man who'd lost his wife too soon. The strength of a father trying to hold the world steady for his daughters, while his own heart was still broken. When the girls ran off to play outside, Jenna and Andrew stayed on the back porch steps. Steam rose from their coffee cups, the scent mixing with the sound of rustling leaves. I haven't done this in a long time, Andrew said quietly. Letting someone in. I mean, really in. I understand, Jenna said, gazing out toward the yard. I spent 3 years avoiding it, convincing myself work was enough. Andrew looked at her, a small smile forming. What changed? Jenna laughed softly. 2 very determined 6-year-olds walked into a cafe and gave me no choice. Andrew laughed, too, but his smile faded into something deeper, more serious. Jenna, I should be honest, he said slowly. I come with complications. Those 2 girls, they are my world. Anyone who steps into my life has to understand that. I wouldn't want it any other way, Jenna said immediately, her voice calm but certain. She turned fully toward him. Andrew, your daughters don't scare me. In fact, they're why I'm here. They're incredible. And the way you love them, The way you show up every single day, even when it's hard. That's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Andrew's eyes softened, shimmering in the afternoon light. "I haven't felt like this in a long time," he admitted, his voice rough. "And it's scary, because the last time I loved someone like this—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "I lost her." Jenna reached out and took his hand, their fingers intertwined naturally, as if they'd always known how. "I'm scared too," she whispered. "But I think being scared means it matters. It means it's real." Andrew nodded, a sad smile tugging at his lips. "Yeah, it does." Then his face darkened slightly. "There's something I haven't told you." Jenna felt her chest tighten. "What is it?" "Sarah's parents. My in-laws. They're very close to the girls. They visit every week. And they worry the girls will forget her. That I'll replace her?" Jenna finished softly, her tone full of understanding. Andrew nodded, eyes cast downward. "I would never want that," Jenna said firmly. "Sarah will always be their mother. I don't want to take her place. I just want to add to what's already there. If they'll let me." Andrew looked at her for a long moment, as if someone had finally spoken the words he'd never been able to say out loud. "How did you know that's what I needed to hear?" Jenna smiled faintly, though her eyes glistened. "Because I know what loss feels like. My dad passed away 3 years ago, heart failure, and the man I thought would stay." She paused, inhaled deeply. "He left. Couldn't handle the grief, the debt, the mess. So I know what it's like to be left behind. And I'll never do that to anyone." It was the first time she had spoken Marcus's name aloud, the man who had shattered her faith in love. And for the first time, she felt lighter. Andrew squeezed her hand gently. "Then he was a fool." Jenna laughed through her tears. "Yeah, he was." And in that small, tearful smile they shared, both of them knew something had begun. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a small light, but enough to chase away the long shadows they had carried for years. 2 months passed, like pages turning quickly in the wind, each one filled with small moments that, together, became the rhythm of a new life shared. Jenna was there at the Halloween recital, clapping louder than anyone when Poppy and Sadie stepped on stage in bright floral costumes, singing under the lights. In the dim auditorium, Andrew's hand found hers. "Thank you for coming," he whispered. She started stopping by his construction site every morning, bringing 2 cups of hot coffee. She learned to tell the difference between a floor plan and an elevation drawing, got to know his co-workers, men who never missed a chance to tease the engineer dating the pretty vet. In October, they went pumpkin picking. Poppy and Sadie insisted on choosing identical pumpkins, somehow convincing both Jenna and Andrew to bring home 2 huge, perfectly matched ones. "Don't you see, Dad?" Sadie said, rolling her pumpkin toward him. "We're a family." Andrew froze for a moment. The word family hung in the air, light and heavy all at once, like a promise not yet spoken aloud. One Friday afternoon in late November, Jenna came over as usual. She had a key now. Andrew had given it to her the week before, his hand trembling slightly as he placed it in her palm. "So you don't have to wait out on the porch," he'd said, but they both knew it meant much more than that. She opened the door quietly, planning to surprise them. But from the kitchen came the sound of small voices. "But she's not our mom," said Poppy. Jenna froze in the hallway. "I know," Sadie replied softly, "but she's kind." "I know she's kind," Poppy whispered, her voice catching. "But sometimes I wish Mommy was here, and I feel bad for liking Miss Jenna when Mommy's not." A quiet sob escaped her. If we love her too much, does that mean we're forgetting Mommy? Jenna's heart shattered. For a moment, all her old fears rushed back, that she was intruding where she didn't belong, taking a place that wasn't hers. She backed away, slowly, then slipped outside. When the door clicked shut behind her, she started to run. That night, she didn't answer Andrew's calls. The next morning, she sent only one message. Need a little time. I'm sorry. By Sunday, she sat alone in her Back Bay apartment, staring out at the Charles River shimmering under the cold light. The walls she'd thought she had torn down were slowly rising again, higher than before. Then Betty came. She knocked until Jenna had no choice but to open the door. He's a wreck, Betty said bluntly, stepping inside. And the girls too. What happened? Jenna told her everything. She held nothing back. Betty listened quietly, then sighed. Jenna, sweetheart, do you know what Poppy said after you left? Jenna shook her head. She told Sadie. Mommy would like Miss Jenna. Mommy would want Daddy to be happy. And then they wrote a letter to their mom in heaven, telling her all about you. Tears streamed down Jenna's cheeks. But they're hurting, Betty. They're confused. I saw it. Of course they are, Betty said gently. They're 6 years old, and their mother is gone. But do you know what they need most? Someone who doesn't leave. Someone who shows them that love doesn't mean disappearing. She looked straight at Jenna. Marcus taught you the wrong lesson, that when things get hard, people leave. But Jenna, you're not Marcus, and Andrew isn't you. Monday morning, Jenna stood outside the veterinary clinic, staring at her phone. She took a deep breath and typed, "Can I come over? We need to talk." The reply came instantly, "Please." When she arrived, the girls were at school. Andrew opened the door. He looked like he hadn't slept all night. "I'm sorry," they both said at the same time. Jenna gave a shaky laugh. "I heard Poppy and Sadie talking, that I'm not their mom, that they feel guilty for liking me." "Jenna?" "And I got scared," she cut in. "I thought I was taking Sarah's place. I thought I should leave before anyone got hurt." She wiped her tears. 3 years ago, when everything fell apart, Marcus left. And part of me still believes that leaving is the only way to survive. Andrew stepped closer, resting a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to leave. The girls are just learning how to love someone new and still love their mom. That's hard, even for adults." He reached for a piece of paper and handed it to her. A letter, written in the uneven handwriting of children. "Dear Mommy in Heaven, we want to tell you about Miss Jenna. She's kind, and she makes Daddy smile. We think you'd like her. We can love her, and still love you, right? Daddy says it's okay. Please don't be sad. Love forever, Poppy and Sadie." Jenna sank into a chair, tears spilling freely. Andrew knelt beside her. "They need you, Jenna. I need you. But more than that, we need you to stay, even when things get hard. Because they will. Every family has those moments. But that's what makes it real." Jenna looked up into his tired, honest blue eyes. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I," he said. "But we can be scared. Together." She stood, stepped forward, and wrapped her arms tightly around him. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry I ran." Andrew brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You came back," he said softly. "That's what matters." April arrived with cherry blossoms blooming across Boston. Soft pink petals scattered on sidewalks, along the Charles River, and quietly within Jenna's heart. 6 months had passed since that first date at the construction site. 6 months of morning coffees, bedtime stories with Poppy and Sadie, and the feeling of Andrew's hand in hers on the walk home. Then, one evening, Andrew said, "My in-laws want to meet you." Jenna set her teacup down, pulse quickening. "Tom and Linda Martinez," he continued. "They're very close to the girls, and they're worried." "Worried I'll try to replace her?" Jenna asked softly, but firmly. Andrew nodded. "They lost their daughter. Poppy and Sadie are all they have left of her." Jenna took a deep breath. "Then I'll meet them." Dinner was set at Andrew's house. Jenna arrived early to help him cook, though her hands trembled as she sliced the vegetables. She couldn't remember ever feeling this nervous, not from fear of being disliked, but because she understood what this dinner truly meant: to be accepted, or never to be. When the doorbell rang, Jenna nearly jumped. Tom and Linda Martinez were both in their late 60s. Tom was tall, silver-haired, with kind, weathered eyes. Linda was petite, graceful, with soft blue eyes, the same eyes as Poppy, as Sadie, and as the woman in the framed photo on the shelf, Sarah. "This is Jenna," Andrew said cautiously. Linda studied her for a long moment. Her gaze wasn't cold or hostile, only measured, thoughtful. "It's very nice to meet you," she said at last, her voice low but polite. Dinner unfolded under a polite layer of awkwardness. It was Poppy and Sadie who saved the mood. Chattering about school, about how Miss Jenna teaches us dog breeds, and about their weekend plans. "We're going to the aquarium," Sadie announced excitedly. "Miss Jenna's never been to the New England Aquarium before." "Oh? Where are you from, dear?" Tom asked, keeping his tone neutral. "Connecticut," Jenna replied lightly. "But I've lived in Boston for 8 years now. I run a small veterinary clinic in Back Bay." Linda nodded, then said suddenly, "Sarah loved animals too. She always wanted a dog. But back then, we lived in an apartment. No pets allowed." The table fell silent for a beat. Jenna smiled gently. "Poppy and Sadie told me. They said their mom taught music and had a beautiful voice." "The voice of an angel," Tom said, his throat tightening. "Andrew still sings her songs to the girls," Jenna added softly. "They told me about her favorite, Over the Rainbow. It's such a lovely song." Linda's eyes shimmered. "She sang that to them when they were babies," she whispered. After dinner, while Andrew took the girls upstairs for their bath, Jenna and Linda stayed behind in the kitchen, washing dishes together. Only the sound of running water and faint soap bubbles filled the air. "Mrs. Martinez," Jenna began. "Linda," the older woman corrected, her voice gentle but firm. "Linda," Jenna repeated with a nod. "There's something I want you to know." She took a deep breath, her heart pounding. "I never want to replace your daughter. Sarah will always be Poppy and Sadie's mother. I only hope to have a small place in their lives, not instead of her, but alongside her memory." Linda looked at her for a long moment. Her eyes grew glossy. "My daughter chose well," she said softly. "Andrew is a good man, and those little girls, they deserve to be happy. They deserve to have a whole family again." Jenna stayed silent. In the older woman's voice, she heard both love and fear. "But," Jenna asked quietly, "you're still afraid, aren't you?" Linda's eyes sharpened, her tone steadying. "But if you ever hurt them, if you ever walk away like so many others have—" "I won't," Jenna interrupted, her eyes bright through tears. "I promise you, I never will." Linda held her gaze, long enough to make Jenna's chest tighten, then slowly nodded. "I believe you," she whispered, Sarah would have liked you. You have kind eyes." When the Martinezes left, Linda hugged Jenna tightly at the door. "Take care of my family," she murmured. "I will," Jenna said, her voice trembling but firm. As the door closed, Jenna stood in the living room, surrounded by the framed photos on the wall: Sarah, Andrew, and two little girls laughing in sunlight. She knew then that another door had opened, not between past and present, but between memory and hope. June came, and with it, the full bloom of Boston's cherry trees, their pale pink petals scattering across sidewalks, along the Charles, and gently into Jenna's heart. 8 months had passed since she and Andrew had become official. 3 weeks remained until their wedding. That evening, the house smelled of sautéed garlic and fresh basil. Jenna was in the kitchen, preparing dinner. Andrew was still at the construction site, and she assumed the girls were upstairs playing. Until she heard it. A cry. Not the usual childish whine, but a deep, broken sound. The kind that only comes from something cracking inside. Jenna dropped the spoon and rushed upstairs. Sadie sat on the bedroom floor, clutching a worn, pink stuffed bunny, her shoulders shaking. "Sadie? Sweetheart, what's wrong?" Jenna asked, kneeling down. I can't remember," Sadie sobbed. "I can't remember Mommy's voice." Beside her, Poppy's eyes were red too, her small hand gripping her sister's arm. Jenna's heart clenched. She sat down and wrapped both girls into her arms. "Oh, Sadie," she whispered. "Everyone keeps talking about the wedding," Sadie cried, "and I am happy. I really am. But then I feel bad for being happy when Mommy's not here. I tried to remember her singing, but I can't. I'm scared, Jenna. I'm scared I'm forgetting her." Jenna took a deep breath, her voice soft as wind through leaves. "You're not forgetting her, sweetheart. Your mom lives in your heart, in your laughter, in the way you sing, in how you love your sister." "But I want to hear her," Sadie whispered, so quietly it almost disappeared into the air. Jenna turned to Poppy. "Do you girls have any videos of your mom?" Poppy nodded slowly. "Dad does, on his computer, but he doesn't watch them. He says it makes him sad." Jenna gently rested a hand on her shoulder. "Then stay here, okay? I'll call your dad." She called Andrew. "You need to come home. Now," she said, her voice trembling but steady. "It's about the girls." When he arrived, she told him everything. He was silent for a long time. Then he nodded. And together, they did what maybe they should have done a long time ago. They sat, all 4 of them, on the living room sofa. The computer screen flickered to life, and Sarah appeared. Sarah, rocking her baby girls and humming softly. Sarah, laughing as she baked cookies. Sarah, looking into the camera and saying, "Mommy loves you." No one spoke. There was only the sound of quiet sobs and hands finding each other. Andrew held both daughters tight, tears streaking his face, and Jenna, sitting beside him, wrapped her arms around all 3, feeling it with every beat of her heart. Real love never asks anyone to forget. It doesn't replace. It expands. It makes room for both the ache and the joy. When the video ended, Jenna wiped her tears and said softly, "You know what? I have an idea for the wedding." Poppy looked up. "What is it?" "We'll have a special seat," Jenna said. "A chair just for your mom, with flowers, beautiful ones, and—" She hesitated, her voice gentler now. "We'll release butterflies. Your mom loved music and butterflies, didn't she?" The twins nodded, eyes still glistening but brighter now. "Then we'll do that," Jenna smiled. "And while we let them fly, we'll play her song, Over the Rainbow. That way, she'll be there with us, in her own way. Sadie sniffled, then whispered, "Miss Jenna, I'm scared of something." "What is it, sweetheart?" "When you marry Daddy, does that mean you'll go away? Mommy went away. I don't want you to go, too." Jenna pulled her close, holding her tightly. "Listen to me, Sadie. I'm not going anywhere. Getting married means I'm promising to stay. Forever. Do you understand?" Sadie looked up, tears still shimmering. "You promise?" "I promise," Jenna said firmly. "Okay," Sadie breathed, finally resting her head against Jenna's chest, her small body relaxing, her trust returning. "Okay." That night, after the girls had fallen asleep, Andrew found Jenna sitting on the porch, gazing at the moonlit garden. He came up behind her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Thank you," he said softly, "for knowing what they needed, for not trying to erase Sarah from their lives." Jenna turned, smiling through the glow of porch light. "I never would. She's part of them. And they're part of you, so she's part of us." Andrew's smile deepened. Then he leaned down and kissed her. Slow, real, filled with quiet promise. "I love you, Jenna Carlisle. I love you, Andrew Callahan. And I love our girls." The word "our" lingered between them, light as the summer breeze, yet steady as a vow. 9 months after the day two little girls walked into Tat with a mission in their eyes, Andrew Callahan returned to that same corner table, his hand clutching a small velvet box. When Jenna stepped through the door, still puzzled, thinking they were meeting at another restaurant, Andrew simply said, "I wanted to bring you back to where it all began." He spoke about the night he'd been 17 minutes late, about the two little matchmakers with whipped cream mustaches who pulled him back into life, and how Jenna had given him permission to live again, to hope, to love, without betraying the memory he'd lost. The box opened. A diamond sat between two sapphires, blue like Sarah's eyes. "Jenna Carlisle, will you marry me?" Tears turned into laughter. "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." The cafe bell chimed. Poppy and Sadie burst in like twin whirlwinds. "We knew it!" Behind them stood Mrs. Ruth, smiling softly. A family was born right where it had all begun. The weeks that followed were made of tender fragments, butterfly dresses for Mom. A silver bracelet engraved with musical notes, given to Jenna by Linda. Not to replace, but to continue. The girls wrote a letter to their mother, in heaven. "We still love you, Mom. We love Miss Jenna, too. Is it okay to have both?" Those innocent words closed a chapter of pain and opened one of healing. On the wedding day, the backyard beneath the treehouse became a small chapel. Cherry blossoms drifted down like spring snow. A single empty chair sat in the front row, a white rose on its cushion. A small sign reading, "Forever in our hearts. Sarah Martinez Callahan." Poppy and Sadie, in butterfly dresses, walked down the aisle first. When Jenna read her vows, she turned toward the girls. "Thank you for choosing me. I promise to be here, in joy and in storm. I may not be the mother who gave you life, but I will be the mother in your hearts, always." 2 silver butterfly pendants were clasped around the necks of 2 children whose hearts were bigger than the sky. Andrew's vows were short but deep. "You taught me how to honor the past without sacrificing the future. You gave my daughters another mother, and you gave me my life." Their kiss bloomed in the laughter and cheers of 2 little girls. Then came the most special moment. The butterfly cage opened as Over the Rainbow played. Sarah's own voice from an old recording. The butterflies caught the golden sunset and soared upward. A visible blessing carried by the wind. Tom and Linda held hands, eyes glistening through their smiles. Mrs. Ruth nodded quietly, a plan well completed. That night, beneath golden garden lights, Jenna leaned on Andrew's shoulder, Poppy and Sadie nestled between them. A family doesn't erase its scars. It learns to hold them gently, to let pain become the cocoon, and new love, the wings. If you've ever loved someone and lost them, if you've ever built walls around your heart, swearing never to let anyone in again, if you've ever believed your chance at love was over, this story is for you, for those who have been broken and are learning how to piece themselves back together, for those who are afraid but still try, for those who think that loving again means betraying what was lost, and especially for the children whose hearts are purer than ours, the ones who know that love doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be real. Because love, true love, is always worth fighting for, even when it comes late, even when it's complicated, even when it arrives carrying a little pain. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next healing journey. Comment and tell me where you're watching from and which moment moved you the most. Thank you for being here. See you in the next story.